First things first, there are a few different ways to watch this video, and I've done some special things to enhance the experience, so hang with me while I briefly explain. The in-game HUD is limited to showing just 5 lives, so I track lives and deaths in the sidebar. As enemies and obstacles show up in the game, you'll see the art and descriptions from the manual shown a little lower. I created custom images for those that didn't have one in the manual. And the icing on the cake is in the bottom left-hand corner. One downside of watching runs like this is that it's hard to grasp just how difficult things can be when you see someone succeeding most of the time. To enrich the video, I took the deaths from 11 different run attempts, synced them up with the main footage on the right, and display them here with a running count of all of the toads that died for science. There's going to be more on the screen than anyone could ever process at once, but the idea is that the information is at your disposal. If you want to know the name of an enemy, how many times I've died, or what it looks like to die in certain areas, it's all there for you. This is the most comprehensive version of the video, but if you want one without commentary, without a sidebar, or you just want to see a standalone death reel, there are links for those other variants in the description. So why play Battletoads? Well, for one, it stands out as a masterpiece on the NES. Its controls are tight, its level design is varied and fun, its artistic style surpasses that of many Super Nintendo games, and its distinctive music gets stuck in your head. Apart from a few problems, which I'll talk about at the end, it's a really polished game. But what makes Battletoads legendary is its difficulty. It's one of the hardest games ever made. It requires precision platforming, strict micro-movements, split-second reactions, and the mental endurance to remain focused for extended periods of time. You start with just 3 extra lives, and from there you have to endure lengthy levels, tenacious bosses, and hundreds of enemies and obstacles that will kill you in one hit. From a young age, I've always wanted to complete this game, and for years I've avoided watching any videos of anyone else playing it because I didn't want outside influences to give me an advantage. I wanted to complete it on my own terms and discover the game via the authentic 90s experience, level by level, on a real NES, without any help. And that's what you'll see here. So please enjoy my playthrough of Battletoads. Battletoads was published in June of 1991 by TradeWest and developed by Rare, the same company that went on to create Donkey Kong Country, GoldenEye, and Banjo-Kazooie. We play as Rash, and our goal is to rescue our companions, Pimple and Princess Angelica, who have been kidnapped by the Dark Queen and taken to a nearby planet. We begin on Ragnarrox Canyon. It's by far the easiest level, so I'm not so worried about dying on here as much as I am just trying to kill all of the enemies as fast as possible. You'll briefly see a warp in the top right hand corner of the screen. For this endeavor, I wanted to showcase every level of Battletoads, so I won't be using the warps that would otherwise let me skip multiple levels. The controls of Battletoads are simple. Pressing left and right will walk in those directions, and double tapping in a direction will make you run. The A and B buttons jump and attack respectively, and if you attack while running, you can perform a headbutt, which you'll see me doing throughout the game. The first boss is appropriately named Boss Walker, and it's a cakewalk to beat. Normally Rash just stands there after the boss fight, but in this run I managed to pull off the elusive split leap, a good omen if there ever was one. Lookee Hole isn't much harder than the first level. After fooling around a bit, I realized that juggling the ravens on this level 8 times gives you a 1-up. So the best use of this level is to farm as many lives as you can, lives which you'll almost certainly need later on in the game. You can't hit the ravens more than 8 times to get more 1-ups. Even though I'm unable to complete some of the combos, that's alright, because I'm still getting points, and that will earn me extra lives. Every 100,000 points gives us an additional life, and our primary goal in the early levels is simply to stay alive and accrue as many extra lives as possible so that we'll have some wiggle room in difficult levels to come. From here on out, I'll just be juggling ravens, bashing enemies, and avoiding electrozaps, so we'll pick things up on the next level. Turbo Tunnel represents the first difficulty spike we'll encounter in the game, and if you played it as a child, this was likely as far as you ever progressed. But it's just a foreshadowing of what's to come. At first, Turbo Tunnel seems impossible, but with time and persistence, it slowly transitioned from feeling impossible to almost routine. I won't trivialize the level by calling it easy, but if I ranked the levels from easy to difficult, Turbo Tunnel wouldn't even be in the top half of the rankings. That said, I'll leave you to the music and pick up on the next level. Arctic Caverns functions as a nice reprieve from the stressful hoverbike section of Turbo Tunnel. There's one tricky spot in the level, but for the most part, it's pretty chill. Once you know the layout of the level and the trick to passing the ending sections, you can breeze through it without much risk of dying. It's also worth noting that unlike other levels, you'll retain some of your momentum and slide on the ice. As long as you keep your cool and don't overcompensate, it's not hard to deal with. Anytime you play through a game, you'll usually have some anomalous mistakes that you don't normally make, but which show up in your final playthrough. Missing the fly and getting hit by that snowball is one of those. Headbutting the upcoming snowman is very important. If I had punched him instead of headbutting him, he'd have changed his pattern, which can complicate things. Coming up, there are a couple of snowmen that will throw some patterns we'll have to avoid. They make a sound when they throw a snowball, so listen for that sound. Just after headbutting the first snowman, I'll briefly run to the right, scrolling the screen, and causing the second snowman's first throw to disappear. This is the only run where I've had this happen, so listen carefully and watch as I barely avoid his second throw. After some trial and error, I realized that the easiest way to handle the next section is to let the ice cube come to me and simply pick it up. If you wait for it to gain momentum, it's harder to pick up, and a spike back spawns, complicating everything. And coming up is the only scary jump of the level. Even a split second too late or early, and you're dead. The timing of that jump is very tight. On the other side of this wall, you can see the edge of a brown platform. Normally I ride this to the bottom and pick up an extra 5,000 points, but in this run, I slip off of it and narrowly avoid dying. And finally, we have a simple puzzle. In the first section, you can just hop and make it under the wall in time. However, using the same strategy in the second section will get you killed. We have to stand right next to the wall so we can run under it quickly to avoid getting pancaked. And that wraps up the level. The ice caps have melted and we're now on Surf City, where we get to avoid some logs. They're not bad, but if you hit 2 of them, you're dead. Coming up is a waterfall followed by a 1-up. It's the only one in the game I have a hard time consistently hitting, because as far as I know, you need a high bounce to reach it, and the height of the bounce off the water seems to be random. The whirlpools are easily avoided by using the safe zones at the top and bottom of the screen. And now we get to beat up on some Vaders and kill the only 2 tall walkers in the game. This is Big Blag. I discovered an exploit where you can juggle him on the edge of the screen, but let me assure you, if you mess up the juggle and lose your stick, he can be a real nuisance to beat, and you'll likely lose at least a few lives in the process. Next up is the mines. Hit one and you're dead. These mines are controlled by RNG, or a random number generator. That means they're positioned differently every time, so there's no way to practice or memorize this section. In my opinion, it's easier than Turbo Tunnel, but unlike Turbo Tunnel, we don't have the luxury of predictability. Karnath's Lair. This level has no enemies, only snakes, obstacles, and the art of the dance. This jump coming up is a little scary, but your feet are more likely to get you killed than your head. So as long as your feet clear the spike below, you're usually fine, because the hit detection on your head isn't nearly as punishing. Okay, so the art of dance kind of got me killed there. But everyone gets one stupid death, okay? So that's my one stupid death of this run. I died for my art. This is the last level of Karnath's Lair, and like everything else in this video, I figured out how to beat this level on my own. And until I went and did some research after completing this run, I legitimately thought that the way I completed it was the intended method. But it ends up that I actually discovered a bit of a shortcut. I'll show you the intended method of playing this level at the end of the video. Volkmar's Inferno might as well be named Dantes Inferno. Don't be misled by how easily I'm dispatching with these scuds. The difficulty spike on this level is so big that every other level we've played thus far pales in comparison. These logs aren't that hard to traverse, but they're a little unnerving. And the rat rockets coming up next are one-hit kill, so if I mistime a headbutt or a dodge, I'm dead. In fact, when we get to the second half of the level, everything is one-hit kill. The rest of the level puts hair on your chest and burns it back off again. Here we go! Intruder Excluder. This is one of those levels on which I've had to learn to be patient. If you rush things on Intruder Excluder, you just tend to get yourself killed, and the checkpoints on this level are pretty spread out, so when you die, you end up replaying large sections of the level again. The gas, the fans, or falling from the bottom of the screen will all immediately kill you, so I just take my time and carefully platform my way to the top. This is Robomanus. If he lands on you, you're pancaked, and if he shoots you, you'll almost certainly die. So you're always trying to find a balance between ducking, avoiding him, and attacking him. This gets harder toward the end as he speeds up, so when he does kill me and I respawn, I'll take advantage of my momentary invincibility to get in some free hits. Tarah Tubes. These mechnodroids I'm headbutting explode upon contact with you, so if you mistime the headbutt even a little, or if you ever let one touch you when you're not attacking, they'll instantly explode, killing you. Tarah Tubes is a long marathon of a level, filled with plenty of obstacles and enemies designed to destroy you. Among them are the crazy cogs that we're about to see. In true Indiana Jones fashion, we must run or risk being crushed. It took me many attempts to get through this level, getting a little farther each time, and each time asking myself, how much longer can this level be? It took a while to learn how to carefully handle the behavior of these underwater enemies, knowing when to run and when to attack. These ducks are called steelbeaks, and if they get close enough to you, they'll viciously attack and kill you. This lower section is actually a puzzle of sorts. The intended solution is to eventually position yourself between two steelbeaks, then move with them to the right so you can get past them. But I discovered that by stunning the first steelbeak at the last moment and running to the far left, I can actually cause it to despawn, allowing me to leap through what would have been a slow section. And it was all for nothing, so we'll pick up our 1-up and knock it out again. It takes 7 hits to stun a steelbeak, so you'll see me punching it 6 times, then saving that 7th punch for the end. There's a real sense of accomplishment when you finally beat one of these later levels. Here's my friend Chris and me when I beat this level for the first time.
Oh! I beat Tarah Tubes!
Rat Race is just what it sounds like. We're about to engage in a foot race with a rat named Giblet. We have to get to a bomb and destroy it before he touches it or we lose. He gets faster each round, which means our margin of error gets smaller each race. Remember how we have to double tap in a direction to run? When I first began playing this level, I thought that I had to double tap on every single new platform, and for a while that's how I played and even completed the level. But playing like that will leave your left thumb very tired to the point that you can't double tap effectively in boss fights. In later runs of the level, I discovered that if you change direction mid-air, you retain your running speed without having to double tap again. Discovering that was a huge help and made this level go from feeling nearly impossible to manageable. There's one more race after this where Giblet runs even faster. Unfortunately, there's a bug in the game that can end your run at the conclusion of that race. You literally have to reset the game after coming all this way, and it's ended at least one really good run of mine. I'll talk about this more later, but for now, enjoy. This is General Slaughter. He requires more hits than any other boss in the game, and it takes a few hits to get him going, but once he starts to move, he'll get faster and faster with each hit. Mess up and he'll gore you. Do something for me. Make a fist with your left hand and tightly squeeze your thumb against your index finger's knuckle. Keep squeezing until I get to the boss of this level if you want to have some idea of the physical strain it'll take on you. That glowing orb is called Buzzball, and if it touches you, you're dead. The only way to gain a little time on Buzzball is on the corners, because on straightaways it's faster than you and is constantly catching up to you. This is the one part of the run where I struggled, and it serves as a decent demonstration of the frustration of playing Battletoads. This is how the controls work on Klingerwinger. You have to hold the direction on the D-pad to indicate which direction you want to go. Not tap, hold. If you press the wrong direction, or don't hold down the right direction, then your unicycle will slow way down and you'll be dead momentarily. So each time you hit a corner, you have to quickly move your thumb to the appropriate direction on the D-pad. This death race is mostly won or lost by making quick, accurate transitions in the corners. If you're too slow, Buzzball will catch up and you're fried. Making quick corner transitions is important, but that's not the only factor at play here. Note how this is the last left turn we'll see for a while. So what ends up happening is, your thumb slides farther and farther to the right of the D-pad, to the point that you're trying to hold down a direction with the left side of your thumb's knuckle. If you succumb to the temptation to move your thumb so as to reposition it on the D-pad, the Buzzball will catch up to you. So you have to either exercise the self-discipline to endure the pain and uncertainty of your thumb slipping off, or try to re-grip and almost certainly die. When you fail to complete the level in 1 or 2 attempts, it can really start to hurt. In fact, I developed a callus on my thumb just from playing Klingerwinger. So what did I try to overcome this problem? I actually started cleaning the controller and my hands with isopropyl alcohol to remove as much oil as possible so I could have a better grip. But as your hands start to warm up, that benefit quickly goes away. At points I resorted to using 2 hands, which can get a little complicated, but can also help with the re-gripping issue. I also considered using an NES Advantage joystick since it's easier to hold a direction on a joystick rather than on a directional pad, but most kids didn't grow up with an Advantage at their disposal, and I wanted to play as most kids would have played, so using a joystick to overcome the inherent difficulty of the game would have felt a bit like cheating to me. At this point, your thumb is going to be slipping, and you desperately want to reposition it on the controller. Watch closely here. You're about to see the consequences of trying to re-grip. See how much it slows down? So, this is Clingerwinger. The whole time you're just pressing down, rapidly switching directions in the corners, trying not to slip off of the D-pad, not just pressing down, but pressing down hard so that the D-pad doesn't inadvertently lose contact with the direction, and just hoping against hope that your movements are precise enough. What you're seeing here is just a microcosm of what it takes to beat this game. There's a lot of failing and failing and failing before you finally break through. This is how things went on every level until it finally clicked and I just didn't struggle as much anymore. We won't be here too much longer, so for the rest of the race, just enjoy this stress-inducing music and try to endure the pain that you're starting to feel in your left hand. You thought that was the last one, didn't you? Clingerwinger will take your hopes and electrocute them, but this is the last one, promise. If you're getting tired of watching the same thing in the main video, this would be a good time to turn your attention to the death reel in the sidebar. So, how's your thumb feeling? We're at the boss fight now, so you can rest your hand. I remember mine was hurting quite a bit at this point. The Revolution is an interesting mix of platforming and one-hit kill enemies. It's a pretty long level, and if your timing is off, it's really easy to die to an enemy or mistime a jump and fall to your death. I'm amazed that Rare was able to program this kind of scrolling into an NES game. It's a shame that most people will never have made it this far into the game, because it really is masterfully made. You'll see me jumping a few times here to scroll up the screen so I can see the enemy before I progress to the next level. I kind of lucked out dying there because this happens to be the first checkpoint in the level. I don't know about you guys, but I think these red hornheads are the stuff of nightmares. How'd you like to see that guy happily skipping up to you in real life? These are red shadow clouds, and those air bubbles are poison, so if I touch them, I'm dead. Now, because I died back at that checkpoint, I lost the stick I got at the beginning of the level. And because I lost that stick, I have to do 7 very precise headbutts to kill the green shadow cloud coming up. If I mistime the headbutts, I'm in for a bad time. So, here goes. There's a lot of precise platforming required up ahead. Timing is key, and it's going to be very easy to fall to my death from here on out. Despite the image in the manual looking like a shadow cloud, I'm convinced that this guy is named Swell Cheeks because the manual says to hang on, and you hang on to those poles to survive. If you miss grabbing one of the poles in time, Swell Cheeks will blow you off the tower. We'll see him again in a little bit. I discovered something very helpful about Swell Cheeks in these later sections, and it's that he doesn't spawn until you jump off of the springboard. I used to jump as soon as possible, fearing that if I wasn't fast enough, Swell Cheeks would kill me. But knowing that I can wait gives me the breathing room to pull off a more accurate jump. This level required a lot of mental endurance from me on the initial playthroughs, because it's long, it's stressful, there are numerous ways to die, and after enduring the other 11 levels of the game and so much of this level, I kept wondering, how much more is there? Am I mostly done or even half done? Do I have more bosses to fight? Can I really beat this game? Without having watched any other runs, I had no reassurances and no expectation of when I'd reach the end. So I'd get this far into the game, die, game over, and wonder, did I even come close? It's easy to sidestep that fact, but it's the difference between having a drill instructor tell you that you have 5 miles to run versus being told to keep running until you're ordered to stop. When you get 4.5 miles in, you wonder to yourself if you have another 10 miles to go. That's the imposing mental challenge of organically playing through Battletoads. I used to think this yellow shadow cloud was Swell Cheeks. Maybe this guy was the original Swell Cheeks and Rare changed the design like they did with some other things. Who knows? The Dark Queen. The first time I got here, I had the biggest adrenaline rush of my life, and I'm not exaggerating. I've endured countless high-pressure business situations, played competitive sports before large audiences, and felt a dying man's ribs crack under my hands as I performed chest compressions on him, but for some reason, Battletoads managed to top all of that. Probably because of just how much led up to the moment of getting here for the first time. Adrenaline constricts your blood vessels to raise your blood pressure, so it causes the small vessels in your extremities to get a poor blood supply. As a consequence, my hands completely froze up to the point that I couldn't perform the double taps I needed to in order to headbutt the queen. I blew through every life and every continue and died. So yes, I've gotten all the way here and game overed. Welcome to Battletoads, huh? But not today. Today, the good guys win. In a twist of fate, we end the game with the same number of lives with which we began. Pimple and Princess Angelica are safe, and the Dark Queen retreats to fight another day. If you want to learn a few more interesting facts about the game and my experience playing it, hang around for the bonus material. But first, a big special thanks to my dear friend Chris, who has quietly supported me, watching me play this game week after week. Chris is the only other person who will ever see my first successful run of Battletoads completed on April 7th, because my capture card failed and I was only able to get the room audio. I completed the run you saw here the following morning, but that first one lives with us. So thank you, Chris, for being there to share it with me. I'm so grateful to call you my friend. It's tough to say and show everything you'd like to in a commentary without also being intrusive, so that's what this bonus material is for, to share all of the knickknacks that I wasn't able to fit into the main video. So what was the most difficult level of Battletoads? Take this with a grain of salt, but I did my best to rate each level in terms of difficulty, and they're all difficult for different reasons. In terms of pure frenetic energy, Volkmayr's Inferno is the hardest. Tarah Tubes can be stressful because it's so long. Rat Race requires fine precision, and Clingerwinger requires even more precision on top of just being painful to play. I guess this is a good time to show that little callus I got from playing Clingerwinger. The Revolution has tons of one-hit enemies, but on that level the most stressful part was just the vast unknown before me as I worked my way toward the final boss. If I had to pick one, I'd pick Clingerwinger for obvious reasons. I got to the end of the level the second time I ever played it, but usually I have to fail a few times before succeeding. Would I change anything about Battletoads? Well, I might change a few things. First, the hitboxes. Some of the hitboxes are just kinda silly. For example, if you look at this clip of the crazy cog chasing me, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm flat. Take a look once more. I think the hitbox for the cog might actually be a square. Take a look at this lightning on Intruder Excluder that killed me after it passed me. One way to die that feels especially unfair is at the ending of Clingerwinger, where I successfully completed the level, but died after dismounting the vehicle. Check out this hornhead that managed to teleport me into its mouth. And finally, look at the queen, who is somehow able to hit me without touching me. So yeah, the hitboxes are kinda goofy in this game. The second thing I'd change is the design of Clingerwinger. Instead of making the player hold the direction, I think Rare should have made it so that you just tap the direction. Sure, holding adds to the difficulty, but it's not a very fun kind of difficulty as with the rest of the game. Third, I'd have them fix the rat race glitch, which you'll see here. What happens is, you get to the end of the level, you kick the bomb, and the rat never falls, so you don't progress to the next part of the stage. There's no way to get down yourself or to suicide, so you're just stuck, and all you can do is dance away your sadness, then reset the game. So how about that Karnath's Lair shortcut on the last stage of the level? It wasn't until I was searching for some level diagrams after beating the game that I discovered the intended path for this level. Just for reference, I've synced up the video from my run with another clip of me completing it via the intended method. Why does the game look and sound so good if I play it on a real NES? Well, I've modded my NES with an NES RGB board, run it through an XRGB Mini upscaler to size it for modern screens, and captured it with an Elgato HD60 Pro. If you capture Battletoads at 30 frames per second, such as on a Canopus AD-VC110, a popular recorder for analog video, it won't look right because it'll drop half of the frames and some elements only show up every other frame. So you'll end up with a video where certain elements are effectively invisible. I've made an in-depth build video on the NES RGB mod elsewhere on this channel if you want more information. It's worth noting that while it upgrades the video and sound quality, it doesn't change the way the game's code executes whatsoever, so the gameplay itself is unchanged from an unmodded NES. Any other Battletoads tidbits? Well, yeah, for one, the boss fight with the Dark Queen is actually a 13th level with its own name. So if you die to the Queen, you're able to use a continue to get back to her rather than having to play the Revolution all over again. Another interesting little piece of history is that 3 of the 4 screenshots shown on the rear of the game's box don't actually exist in the game. Turbo Tunnel looks right, but what about these other 3? This snowman is at the beginning of Arctic caverns, but the room and the floor have changed. The wall pattern in this screenshot matches the beginning of Intruder Excluder, but there aren't any sentry drones between the electro gaps and the actual level. Perhaps the strangest screenshot is from what eventually became Volkmeyer's Inferno, where they show a steamroller level that didn't make it into the final game. The development team decided it was too similar to Turbo Tunnel and removed it. I also found a few graphical oddities as I edited the death reel together. In this clip from Klingerwinger, the toad doesn't fall off the screen like normal. In this clip from the Revolution, you can see something I've noticed happens a lot. On the first frame after a toad respawns, they're often a jumbled mess in the location where they died. And here's a clip from the interlude between Rat Race and Klingerwinger, where the Dark Queen's face doesn't load fully. It pairs up nicely with the pause music. Forgive me for getting a little philosophical here, but playing through this game has been a worthwhile reminder of the value in perseverance. I didn't go into this with a sense of certainty about my ability to complete the game. I just hoped that one day I might if I kept trying. It was really frustrating getting so far only to fail just short of the finish line. It makes you want to quit, but I just kept telling myself that if I continued to try, I might eventually be able to overcome it. Each time I faced a new level in Battletoads, I had to grind my way through it until it became easier and even second nature. Is life any different? I think that too often we're guilty of throwing in the towel because we don't believe we can ever overcome what's before us. We tell ourselves that we'll never get in shape, or we'll never get out of debt, or we'll never have the kind of marriage we hoped we might. But what if, instead, we chose perseverance? To strive to make just a little progress each day. I think that as the years pass, we'd be shocked at how far we've come and how much we've overcome. I have a lot of respect for anyone who's able to beat this game, and likewise have a great deal of respect for people who choose to persevere through difficulty. Thanks for watching, and I wish you the best in overcoming your own Battletoads, whatever they may be.